District Board of Education. Before we begin that meeting, we have a public hearing, a public budget hearing. Is there anyone that wants to be heard on that issue? Do we have anybody in the waiting room?
I do not see anybody there. Brandy?
All right, there being no public comment, the public hearing is now adjourned.
Well, do you want to, we'll provide a brief summary of the budget and an overview for the public hearing, if that's okay, Joe.
Oh yeah, I guess I got ahead of myself. I see it, Nick. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your overview, or whoever is doing it, Linda.
Yep, no worries. Okay. I'm gonna. I just like to
introduce. Hey, Nick, do we need to take a roll call on the record since we're on?
I think it's a good question on the public hearing. We might as well to put it on the record. Good idea, Liz. So, President Fisher, can I take roll?
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Segler.
Okay. McKellar.
Here.
Berge.
Here.
Carpenter.
Here.
Shear.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
And Tank. Not quite. Okay. Thank you, Liz. I'm sharing my screen, and we'll kind of drive as Linda kind of reviews this. I'd like to just thank our Chief Financial Officer, Linda Bilecki, and our business manager, Sean Biddle, for the amount of time, energy, and effort and work, especially this year, with respect to what you're going to see before you, and that is our proposed 2020-2021 budget. Just one quick comment, and I know Linda will touch on this, with the uncertainties of the state budget now more than ever. We want to just let you know that these are basic assumptions that we're building into this, and recognize that these are very dynamic and will be changing, and we'll be updating you through amendments when more information is provided. But with that, I'll turn things over to Linda.
Thank you, Nick. So we'll give a brief overview where we are, or what our best estimates are at this time. And Nick is absolutely correct. Given the impact of COVID-19, there's a lot of unknown. And the first thing we're going to start with is the latest estimate from the state. They typically have a revenue estimating conference. They will have one typically in January, and then they will have another one in May. This gives the state a really good idea in terms of what things look like and what they can propose as terms as revenue, both on the general fund side and then also on the state aid fund, which is actually the fund that we get paid from. So we'll start with the latest estimates. This was based on May. If you recall, there was one in January, and it looked really good when the governor first released her budget in February. And then obviously, given the impacts of COVID-19, those estimates have changed significantly. The school aid fund is estimated to be down about $1.2 billion for the current fiscal year. And the current fiscal year for the state ends on September 30th. However, our fiscal year ends in just 14 days on June 30th. So we have to give you a budget that starts our July 1 fiscal year, and we have to tie up the current fiscal year. With that $1.2 billion shortfall, that is actually going to leave a negative projected state aid fund balance of $1.1 billion. The state cannot run in the red. And so therefore, they have the payments to all entities paid out of the state aid fund must be prorated. And this is defined by Section 296 of the School Aid Act. Next page, please. Section 296 of the School Aid Act defines how that proration will take place. It does require that all entities that are paid out of the state aid fund be prorated. And you can see that as K-12 districts. That includes the public school academies, ISD, community colleges, and any public universities. Proration is based on how much of that total that these entities receive. That's how much you're going to get hit. In terms of ISD impact, we get about 7 to 8% of the total allocation in the state aid fund. So the state aid fund is about a little over $13 billion. So our percentage of that, we believe, will be about 70 to $80 million. Coincidentally, Section 81 funding, which ISDs receive, it's like our operating money, is about $69.1 million. So it's pretty close to that 70 to $80 million in total. And so what that means for TBA is about a $1.8 million cut. So that's what it looks like currently under the best estimate that we have. I will point out that at the May Revenue Estimating Conference, it was determined that there would be yet another revenue estimating conference this year. That is currently scheduled for August 15th. Part of the issue is that when the income tax deadline got extended, that actually kicked the can down the road a little bit for the state to determine actually how much money they're actually going to receive. So they're going to have yet another one on August 15th, which will give the state about 45 days to actually determine what the shortfall is prior to the end of their September 30th fiscal year. So that gives an idea in terms of what the deadline is. The official deadline, the official timeline starts when the Department of Treasury notifies the state budget director that a proration is necessary. That gives 30 days for the legislature to actually work and start to dig their heels in terms of what they're going to do and what that proration might look like. But as of today, that has not happened. That 30-day timeline has not started. In terms of what that proration might look like, there are a few options that the governor and the legislature does have. The legislature may be able to prevent a proration if they go and actually do line item adjustments, or if they can actually allocate more out of the budget stabilization fund. At this time, they can only take up to 25% of the budget stabilization fund, and I believe that is around $1.2 billion. But in order to take more than that 25%, that would take the legislature to act on that. And the other option is they could go in and they could make individual adjustments to different categoricals to help offset the proration. Again, that difficulty is that trying to prorate specific line items is that you're impacting one versus the other. So proration might be more palatable in terms of spreading the pain across the entire across the entire budget versus picking on just one program versus another. That's where you're hearing that $700 per pupil cut in terms of local districts, but in terms of ISDs, it's going to be about $70 to $80 million. Again, it's the timeline issue in terms of what might that look like. Will we get a bill in September? If there's a proration necessary in the current year, we just don't know. So we have looked at this and just said, you know, we recognize this is where we currently are. So you will see those $1.8 million reductions reflected in the current fiscal year. And we're carrying that forward to next year because the revenues, based on the latest revenue estimating conference, did not look like they were going to bounce back to prior levels. There was a slight increase, but not significant enough. So in terms of the general education fund for next year, you can see we're estimating a beginning fund balance of about $1.5 million, revenue about 12.6. Again, that does show a reduction in state aid based on the prorations we are expecting. Expenditures of 13.2, leaving us with a deficit of about $690,000. That will still leave us with a ending fund balance of $885,000 or just over 7%. And then the general education levy will be 0.1928, and we did experience a rollback. Last year it was 0.1943. Some of the general assumptions in terms of general education, we did see a property tax increase of 4.5%. Again, the levy was rolled back. We did completely eliminate Section 81 funding. Again, that's across all three funds, and it's about $1.8 million. GSRP carryover funds, that's another one you'll see there's a lot of swings in terms of what that looks like. We always estimate that There won't be the carryover that we had in the prior year, but eventually we end up seeing that. It's just one of those things that the net effect on the fund balance is 0. We did see an increase in the early literacy grant funds. These are carryover funds. We had been allocated the dollars in the current year. We hadn't spent them, but we will amp up that program next year. We have slight reduction in migrant grant funds, but an increase in transfers from other governmental units. We did have some increase in terms of business services and tech revenue for next year. On the expenditure side, we are taking the governor's rate of 42.72%. Those are based on actuarials, and we haven't heard that there will be any change currently in the retirement rate. Hard caps were set at 3.3%. We increased salaries per the schedules. The addition of the new positions, particularly for the early literacy that we spoke about, as well as the 31N, which will be carryover dollars. Again, the reduction in GSRP payouts follows closely along with the reduction in the carryover for local districts. And then we are continuing the support of CKLA. This is year 4 of 6 for this fund. In terms of special education, again, we have a beginning fund balance of $12.8 million. Budgeted revenue, $54.6 million, and expenditures are just under $60 million. We will see a shortfall of approximately $1.1 million. That committed fund balance of 1.2, that will be the remaining of the special education payout that will be implemented based on the policy that we adopted in April. You'll see in the budgets as we amend our current year budget that we actually anticipate a payout to the region of about $6.5 million in special education funds. And that was based on a lot of expenditures we didn't have in the current year, particularly related to COVID-19. We anticipate a lot of districts will be taking the first year payout in one lump sum to help soften their blow in terms of that state aid budget cut of $700 a pupil. The budgeted expenditures are also higher because it does include that payout. So that's a one-time expenditure. So it seems a little high, but just want to point out that that's what's in there. We will end the fund balance. Yes?
Was there a timeline on when the schools had to decide when they were going to and how they were taking those funds that we were giving?
Yes, we had asked for that time payout about the middle of May, and some districts haven't quite committed to that, which is why you're still seeing some of that committed fund balance. So we understand with them, given the unusual circumstances, that may be a little bit slow in getting back to us and deciding strategically what looks best for them. Again, we will end with the fund balance of just under $6.4 million, or just slightly under our 12% committed, as we had talked about. We will continue to levy 2.0 mills in this fund, which is helpful. We were able to, even though we had a Headley rollback, we were still able to levy the full 2 mills. Again, the same increase in property taxes, but we were able to hold on to being able to levy 2 mills. We eliminated Section 81 funding. We did see an increase in our special education funds from the state. Again, we're paid based on what we spend in the current year for next year, and we did have increased cost. And then we did see an increase in federal funds for IDEA, so that was really helpful. Again, same retirement rate, same insurance, same salaries. We did have some new positions in terms of some support that we will need for the general supervision grant. That was an initiative that I believe was rolled out 2 years ago by the state. And so we felt like we needed additional support for that. Again, it's our first year of our fund balance distribution. We do expect most districts will take a 1-year payout given the current financial situation. And the committed fund balance does include year 2. So even that committed piece, that 11.67% does include that committed piece. Vocational education, we have a beginning fund balance of about 1.2 million. We expect to spend have revenue of 10.3 and about the same amount of expenditures. So just a slight surplus we're projecting. The ending fund balance will be 1.2 or 12%. The vocational education levy is down slightly from the prior year. It was 7.2 something last year. Again, same property tax increase, and you can see the millage did drop slightly, elimination of Section 81 funding, and then we did see a slight reduction in our federal Perkins grant. Same retirement rate, same insurance, same salaries. We did have, not in this fund, we did not have any new positions. What we did actually have in this fund is we did include the curriculum supervisor, which we paused on this year given the late departure. So we're adding that back in for next year. We do show a transfer to capital projects of $172,000 to maintain that 12%, recognizing we haven't fully funded our capital projects for the next 2 years. But this does include 100% of the CTC transportation support to our local districts. We had committed to that within our fund balance policy. And this is the millage request form that we'll ask you to sign if you should you support this for this current year. The total mills will be 2.9091, which will be down slightly from the prior year, which was 2.9161. And again, I can't live in a vacuum on this. It takes an awful lot of work to be able to put this all together. So I really want to give a shout out to the business office, particularly Sean Biddle and all of our team down the hallway. That's just really helpful in being able to present this to you for your consideration today. May I answer any questions?
Board members? I have one.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Who was that?
It's me. It's me. I wanted to ask.
Oh, you're here. Okay.
Can you guys hear me? Hi, good morning. Yeah, I made it. For some reason, I thought it was 5:30. So I figured it out in time. But I have a question on the general ed fund, the negative 659,000. Linda, if you kind of like just met, and I'm not asking for specifics, but if you go back in time and look at the first budget, you know, relative to the final budget amendment we do in June, and you kind of go back year after year after year, it is and it's not, I know it's not like clockwork and things change from year to year. So the different influences on each year are unique, but is that starting off with a deficit of 659, is there an expectation in your mind that over time, over the year, if things were to play out as past years, that we would see that swing more and more towards a break even at least throughout the year? Or is there something unique about this year that may not play out that way?
This fund will not break even. That is one of the area of concerns that we will have to address in the general education fund moving forward. Allocated in there is special projects revenue of $250,000 that gives Nick some latitude in terms of what areas within the region that Nick might want to support if districts are looking to do some innovative things. So I do expect that we never spend those funds, so that will be some that we can put back in. We do spend some of those funds consistently year over year, particularly in terms of supporting board and superintendent relationships and evaluations. But I do agree with you, Jason. This is an area of concern.
Okay. Number two is on the special ed side. Just remind me, because I lose track of the specific data, but is a reimbursement rate under Durant that's changed, right? And that in terms of the 28% is a little bit higher now. Is that the case?
It is a little higher, but I want to caution with that a little bit because the state did allocate an additional $60 million this year for an additional 2%. It ended up being about 2.2% for special education costs. That's a new categorical, section 51F. My wonder is, given the current situation with COVID-19, if the state is supporting special education to a higher level, that does set a higher level in terms of maintenance of effort on their end. So I do wonder if that is one area when they look at proration, if they may choose to look at that one a little bit differently.
Okay. And let's talk about proration just so I can understand the historical context. When was the last time that we had a proration where it wiped out the full, is it section 81? I don't remember the number, but the 1.8 million. When's the last time that's kind of happened in the past? Was that back during the great financial crisis?
We did have a proration, but it wasn't to that significant of an extent in terms of what that looked like. That would have been in 2011, 2012 would have been when but we had prorations in 9, 10, 10, 11, but it was not to this significant of a level. And then also Governor Snyder handled that a little bit differently in terms of he actually cut the foundation. If you remember the $470 cut, the 2 years prior to that, it was a proration, but the actual foundation was cut. It lowered the level. With the proration, it doesn't actually cut the foundation. It's just a straight proration. So technically it gives districts discretion in terms of how they can actually handle that within their own budgets.
Okay, so I missed the first few minutes, and I'm sorry. The cut of the 1.8 million, is that something that we've been sort of told is on the docket, or is it something that we're interpreting based on the possible options that they've got down in Lansing?
We have not been told anything officially. All we know are the numbers that have been published by the CREC, which shows a deficit of 1.1 billion. Well, the shortfall is 1.1, but the actual deficit is 1.1 billion. And so just doing the math and recognizing what percentage that ISDs get from the state aid fund, it's about 70 to 80 million dollars, and that is just about that's just about the categorical of Section 81 in total. So we're just utilizing in terms of what percentage are we of that entire $1 billion shortfall to come up with a number that we can try to put to our own budgets.
Okay, so and then you said that it's a possibility that they tap into various other spots. One was that stabilization fund that could lower that number for us so that our hit is a little less than what we're fearing. That's a possibility, but we don't know that, and we won't know that until, you think, well into August or potentially after that?
It depends. I think a lot of this is what's not filtered into this as well is if there's any federal stimulus dollars that are happening. And I think that might be some of the reason as to why they're not moving on this, is they're just wondering if they're going to have some sort of a federal bailout. So obviously, if that does happen, hopefully that will lessen the blow and the impact to all entities being paid out of the state aid fund.
Okay, and then lastly,
Jason,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Just as an example of what Linda's talking about there, currently there's $2.8 billion that are sitting in the Federal CARES Act in Michigan's coffers right now, which the Federal CARES Act does not allow for those dollars to be used to backfill budgets, state budgets. And so just that change in language alone from the feds would be able to fully support, the hole that we're in. Right now, those federal CARE Act dollars can only go towards specific COVID-19 related expenses. And so, both sides of the aisle, both branches of the government, 3 branches of the government are advocating that those dollars be used to support our local or our state budgets. In addition to, we're also petitioning and advocating at the federal level for additional support from local governments and state governments. So we're conservative in our approach. We believe that we are hopeful that it won't be that full elimination of Section 81. But as Linda said, if we're trying to equate it to what our locals are preparing for, this is our percentage of what we think the cut might be.
Okay, so if and maybe just a rough allocation. I know that it's Section 81, right? Am I getting that right? 81 is the 1.8 million. When you allocate that, I know you allocate that across all 3 lines. I call them lines of operation, but general ed, how much of that 1.8 million gets allocated into that budget? So if we were to have it restored, I mean, that's what I'm kind of mentally saying. If it was restored through all of these other miraculous solutions that might come to play, what would that number kind of look like?
That's a good question, Jason. So in terms of what that would look like, would be 22% for general ed, 58% for special education, 20% for vocational education.
Okay, so something like 300, let's call it 350 to 375,000 would fly back into the general ed. Plus you have the 250, and it doesn't count. Yeah, so that, and then it doesn't count the potential shift throughout the year where we tend to gain some ground back. And it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. And then lastly, the last question I have is, you know, we've allocated, and I did mental math last night, so I might be slightly wrong. You know, operationally with our 12% fund balance, we've got about 9 million or so, 9.5 million allocated for just the fund balance, the 12% policy across all three operations. And then we have shifted over, and by the way, the 6.5 million was a pleasant surprise as well to see that upsized a bit. So that's going to be super helpful. But about 13 million or so has been allocated over to capital funds from, you know, collectively. I think I'm getting that number about right, around 13 million total. Is there, what's the plan now going forward to sort of codify or justify that number relative to the capital needs as we go forward? Like, I know that there's going to be every 5 year a plan, but where are we kind of at in terms of thinking, okay, how do we allocate that 13 million and justify it to the world?
Thank you for asking that question. So phase 2 of our strategic plan goal is to look at facilities, and we know that we need to update that facilities plan. So we will begin the work on getting a contract together with an architect to be able to update that plan and give us the needs moving forward so that we can actually have a really solid plan in terms of what we need to do over the next 5 years for that.
Okay, so that's you said that's this coming fiscal year, then we're going to be working on that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and just a reminder for the public, you know, the policy that you approved as a board clearly articulates the process by which we will identify through, you know, verified studies with regards to what those facility needs are for the region to ensure career and technical education, all of the special ed programming that we've committed to supporting to our local districts. And so I really appreciate the foresight that the board and our team has put together in terms of codifying what those facility needs will look like and how we'll be publicly sharing those through budget amendments, through proposals to the board. And so I think that's going to be very helpful in terms of transparency.
I mean, I've got one, just, it's a broad math question, and it's just to state it because I'm and we don't have to know the numbers exactly, but you know, within our policy, that 12% level, it's a 12% relative to expenditures. Expenditures change from year to year, and generally speaking, they rise from year to year with cost of living adjustments, and you know, labor is a large component of our budget. So you know, we build in steps and inflation and all of those aspects. So we're by definition, as we look forward 5 years, 10 years with this policy, we're going to have a growing fund balance in absolute dollars, trying to keep it at about a 12% level relative to those growing expenditures. But that creates, I mean, I don't know the general math, but 50, 60, let's say $50 million in special ed, 55 million, you know, if it's a 2% increase, we're talking about, you know, $1 million type increase in expenditures. By definition, then we'd have to have an increase of at least $120,000 worth of fund balance. And so it continues to grow that way, right? I mean, that's what I'm kind of envisioning this 5 or 10 years down the line. We're going to have this moving target with a 12% fund balance.
Yeah.
Does that concern you at all? Does that worry you in terms of the inflation aspect of things?
It's
Yeah,
12%
actually,
of revenue.
Yeah.
Oh, revenue. Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess I'm saying revenue and expenditures match awfully closely. They better.
But so you raised a really great question, and that's why I think, you know, the statewide policies with respect to when receivership comes into play with a 5% or less, everything is relative. So when you have a payroll that's large, and if you would go to a specific dollar amounts per se, it doesn't cover the magnitude of what you're providing in terms of service for the region. Again, I would equate it or give an example of a TCAPS that's almost $100 million budget versus, a smaller district like Sutton's Bay that has significantly less budget. The reason why you can equate things is by going by that percentage. And so to your point, the actual dollar amount will grow as that percentage grows but I think that's appropriate. It's appropriate because should we get a significant cut like a Section 81, we still have to be concerned about making payroll. We still have to be concerned about, driving a fund balance below to where the state may intervene and with that 5% rule. So that's kind of where I see that play out, but your math is spot on.
Well, I'll say one thing, and this is just a comment because it matters to me. I mean, here we are years later after, lots of controversy and consternation about the fund balance, and we've come up with what I think is a very justifiable, defendable policy. Fleshing out the capital project side of it, which is sort of right now a little bit, in my mind, is a little bit more of a black box, and we're gonna, open up that black box and show the world what the capital funds are designed for, and justify all of that, which is wonderful. And then now here we are in an Armageddon kind of situation for public education around the state and around our region. No one could have anticipated that. Well, some people clearly anticipated pandemics, but I certainly didn't. And so few years later, here we are at a point where when I look at the budget and I see our 12% fund balance policy laid out and put into play, and the capital project side being, shifting money over there, and having a very large and even upsized distribution for the local districts. At one level, I look at it and I say, here we are at a moment where, for the first time, as I look at a budget, and this is maybe naive, but it's for the first time I look at a budget for the ISD, I see constraints, I see concern, I feel a different level of anxiety about the dollar figures. It's a 7% number staring you in the face, makes one pause. And I at one level, I say, well, that feels bad. That feels stressful to some degree. I'm certain much more stressful for those who put the numbers together than for someone who's just seeing the final, summarized figure. But on the other level, I must say that in the absence of us putting together a fund balance policy, in the absence of all of this, our relief that we might feel in an alternative world where we didn't have this $6.5 million distribution, I think we would have had potentially, in my opinion, we would have had a different level of consternation coming at us from the local districts and from the region. So, I mean, I'm actually weighing that stress that I feel when I see a 7% number on the general ed side and 12% numbers on the other side. I'm weighing that against what the alternative feeling might have been with all eyes on the ISD looking at its fund balance and saying, what now? What are you going to do? And having to come up with a plan on the fly, as opposed to having one that was really thought out very, very well. So I'm actually pleased to see this, despite the fact that it has raised the level of stress from a financial perspective. So.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Jason. And I think, I will just close with a reminder of, the board adopted strategic plan, and I commend the board for the vision to be able to lay out those things through the data, through collection of stakeholder input, those ideals that are so critically important. And as you indicated in phase one, develop, adopt, and communicate a financial policy was top of the list. And so timing is everything. I agree. It's one of those things that it shifts kind of that stress level, but I think appropriately. And I'm glad that at this point, again, just commend the board for their vision and their ability to be responsive to locals as well. So.
All right. Any other board members would like to weigh in with your questions or your comments?
Well, thanks for the presentation. It couldn't possibly be clearer and resultant from a ton of work on your part, Linda, and your team.
Do we have any thoughts on how the capital funds may be affected by any changes we'll have to make to our buildings because of COVID-19?
That's a really good question, Jim. I think at this point, we feel like we can cover that within the current operating budgets. I don't see any major renovations that we would be doing. Now, obviously, that may change our mind in terms of the sustainability of this, in terms of how long it goes, if there's a vaccine, because we may have to think about, like, I think about our entryways for some of our particularly special ed programs. Do we look at, some sort of reconfiguration of those entryways in terms of providing a barrier? Or in terms of even buses, do we need to purchase those if we have to continue to social distance? There's lots of impact depending on the term of this.
I'm thinking about some of our programs at the Career Tech Center where we have students who interact so closely, the food, the food service type things. That I think there's a lot of unknown yet there. Thank you.
Anyone else? Brandy or Renee, is there anyone waiting to weigh in on this from the public comment side?
There is no public comment at this time.
All right, Linda or Dr. Sigleric, do either of you have anything further that you want to comment on with respect to the budgets, or have we covered it?
No additional comments. Thank you.
I think we're
Great.
good.
All right, thank you. Then we will adjourn the public hearing at this time and move on to our regular meeting. We've had a roll call, so please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We hope. Okay, we need a motion on approving the agenda.
And so move.
I'll support.
There's a motion and a support. Call the roll, if you would, Dr. Sigleric.
McKellar,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Hank,
Here.
Bergie,
Yes.
McKellar.
Yes again.
Oh, sorry. I'm going on my screen now. Fisher
Yes.
and Shear.
Yes.
All right, I'd like to welcome any visitors that may be tuned in right now. Are there any visitors, Renee or Brandy?
There are not.
All right, given that we started the meeting at 8 a.m., albeit with a budget hearing, it would appear that we could move on then to our action items. And the recommendation is to approve the consent grouping as presented. Is there a motion?
I'd make the motion.
I'll make
to
the
approve
motion.
Consent agenda as presented.
I'll support.
There's a motion and a support. Is there discussion? Dr. Sigleric, would you go ahead, please?
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Tank,
He's muted.
Yes.
Bergie,
Yes.
Yes for Bergie.
McKellar,
Yes.
and Fisher.
Yes. All right, item B, under action items, amend the general education, special education, vocational education, Michigan Works, food service budgets, student school activity fund, general education capital projects, special education capital projects, vocational education capital projects, budgets for 2019-20. Linda.
Thank you, Joe. Before you for your consideration is our final amendment for the 2019-2020 year. We did talk about some of those major changes within those budgets. Obviously, we have taken the $1.8 million hit in terms of what we're estimating according to the CREC numbers from the state aid fund. This budget also reflects the implementation of the financial policy. So you will see there are significant transfers to the capital project funds in terms of supporting our needs that have been identified based on our latest facility plan. It does reflect the impact of COVID-19, mainly from the perspective that the expenditures are down from original estimates. We obviously had significant impacts in terms of supplies, professional development, travel within those budgets. So this is our best guess, given the fact that we have about 2 weeks remaining and a lot of unknowns, and then obviously certainly a lot of unknowns even from the perspective of revenue. So we're asking for your support to amend the budgets for the remaining of the 19-20 fiscal year.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to amend the budgets for the 2019-20 school year.
I'll support.
All right, there's a motion and a support. Is there discussion?
Yeah, I've got just a timing question. Can you guys hear me? Am I properly unmuted? Yeah, I think I am. I see how we get down to the 12% number, using this amended budget. Now, the policy, first off, the timeline of the distribution, we've kind of defined the dollar amount. My understanding is that the final number in terms of a 12% fund balance is something that's determined at the time that this year is audited later in the fall, right? Is that the timing element of the 6.5 million, I'm rounding, distribution, or is that going to be done earlier and then we sort of do a true up on this? I mean, how do we know the final figure before the final figures are audited?
So that will be the last adjusting journal entry that we will do to actually close our books. So we will get a true number in terms of where we're going to end, and that will be the last one that we do. But obviously we will have to pause to determine what will be the final cut in terms of what that might look like from the state level. Whether or not there is a cut or not will actually impact that figure because it's based on revenue.
Right. So yeah. Okay. So you mean the $1.8 million Section 81 piece is an element in there, plus our finalized numbers that are finally audited. That's also an element. Are we doing a distribution then much later in this? Are we doing it around that audit time, or are we going to do something earlier than that for local districts? How are we handling that timing issue?
We will do that distribution after we get the 4096, 4094 numbers, because we want to make sure that we are not reimbursing more than 100% of special education costs because we can't. So our plan is to do that in October, but we will know those numbers earlier than that.
That's when the 4094 and 4096 are done, is October.
Correct.
I mean, the odds of us breaching 100%. Well, it's 6.5 million, so it's pretty close to the edge. Although we're not doing each local district is identified separately in that analysis, so we have to be careful about each one of those.
Right. Yeah. My first blush on this would be that it might be some of the smaller PSAs that they may be forced to taking more than a 1-year distribution for that purpose.
But the LEAs, you don't see that limitation being breached or even close to it.
Would be, again, it would be based on size, and it would be based on what happened this last year in terms of their special education funding. They have reduced cost from the same impact that we had.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Further discussion from board members? Would you call the roll, please, Dr. Siglaric?
Scheer,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item C, recommendation millage levy for 2020-21 and proposed general education, special education, vocational education, Michigan Works, food service budgets, student school activity fund, general education capital projects, special education capital projects, vocational education capital projects, budgets for 2020-21. Again, Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So this is a consideration for the millage levy that we talked about in the budget hearing. Again, that's 2.9091 mils, and the approval of all of our budgets for the initial blush of the 2021 fiscal year. This does include our estimate of the special education payout. That's probably one of the biggest significant changes in there. And it continues the prorated amount in terms of Section 81 based on the latest CREC numbers.
Thank you. I need a motion to support.
I make the motion to support.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on item C. Okay, Dr. Sigleric?
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank
Item
you.
D. Yep, thank you. I'm sorry. Recommendation, item D, master course list and 2021 calendar for adult education. Again, Linda.
This is an annual requirement of Section 107 of the School Aid Act for adult education. It requires that you approve the master course list and the calendar for our adult education programming that we run in conjunction with Michigan Works.
All right, you need a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
I'll support.
We have a motion and support. Is there discussion on item D? Dr. Sigleric?
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Item E, recommendation van bid. Again, Linda.
So we put out for bid two 7-passenger vans. We are in need of replacing one of our vans that we have. It's a 2006. And then we are also looking to add one for one of our ACE programs. We do a lot of community-based instruction and take our students out for special education programming within the community. And this would help to increase the availability of the vans and being able to offer students that experience.
All right, need a motion?
Make the motion to purchase the 2 vans.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. Is there any discussion? And before you take the roll, Linda, thanks so much for your hard work this morning. And you were you're on your game and you were very informative. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Joe. It's very kind.
Go ahead, Dr. Sigleric.
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
and Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item F, recommendation Marzano eye observation for 2020-21. Dr. Coffin, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. We're asking for the board to approve the annual license agreement with the Marzano evaluation system. This supports the eye observation system that is used in all of our local schools across the region in the amount of $64,900.
All right, we need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Support.
Discussion on it, on the motion?
Yeah, I have a basic question. How does this eye observation thing work in the world of online virtual kind of classrooms?
So it's a tool that our building principals use and our superintendents use to evaluate professional staff. So there is, I think it works the same as it does when it's face-to-face. There were some parts of the executive order from the government that paused some of the other requirements that we had. So evaluations were based prior to that March 13th closure. So the system has just allowed for everything to be contained in one location as it normally does when it's face-to-face.
Okay, yeah, so that's obvious. So you mean it's the principle of just tuning into the Google Meet and using it as the tool for summarizing the observation and
Yeah,
the checklist. That makes sense. Yeah.
And the other piece that that we are working with local schools on is the fact that there is an option to be able to roll over the data to use for next year, because we also do not have to evaluate all of our educators this year. So we're making sure that they have that ability to access that data after July 1 as well.
Okay.
Further discussion? Go ahead.
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Berge,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
and Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries. Everyone switched on my Brady Bunch screen. Sorry about that.
Item G, recommendation, annual power school maintenance and support. Again, Dr. Coffin.
Yeah, so again, asking the board to approve the Power School Maintenance and Support Agreement in the amount of $46,461.12. This supports our student information system as well as our human resource information system known as Unified Talent.
All right, we need a motion.
I'd make the motion to support.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion. Any discussion? Go ahead, Dr. Segleri.
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
and Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item H, thank you. Item H, recommendation, contract approval for early on Part C services. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, everyone. So this is a request to allocate funds to continue to pay 5 employees or 5 contract employees to serve students birth to 3 under Part C of IDEA, serving students, young children who are developmentally delayed in an early intervention program. It also indicates that these contract employees would be working, changing from Child and Family Services to Northern Michigan Community Action Agency. It's an increase of employees. All employees would be under the same agency, and we'd be saving some operating costs as well.
All right, we need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
All right, we have a motion and a support. Discussion. Go ahead, Dr. Segleri.
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
I, recommendation, salaries for administrators, classified and ancillary personnel for 2020-21. Dr. Segleri.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Fisher. We're recommending approval for 2020-21 contracts for administrators, classified and ancillary personnel. We have adjusted the salaries accordingly to a 1.5 cost of living adjustment that is commensurate with our agreements with our associations.
All right, we need a motion.
I make the motion to support.
All right, we have a motion.
Second.
Do we have support?
Yes.
I'm
Second.
sorry, I got ahead. Okay, thank you. All right, discussion. Go ahead, Dr. Segleri.
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
J, recommendation to reschedule August 4, 2020 meeting. Dr. Segleri.
If it works in your schedule, I'd ask the board to consider changing the August 4th board meeting to the August 11th board meeting. There's a conflict with the August 4th. And if that works, if you can check your calendar, and if it does, a motion to that effect would be appreciated.
I move that we change the date of the August meeting as recommended.
I'll support.
All right, we have a motion to support. Is there discussion? Go ahead, Dr. Segleri.
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. That will be at 8 o'clock in the morning on August 11th.
Item K, recommendation superintendent contract extension through June 30, 2025. Dr. Segleri, I don't know how much you want me to go into the valuation issue. Obviously, we have a governor's order that permits us to move forward with an extension of your contract without an evaluation. So to that end, I'd ask for a motion that we extend Dr. Segleri's contract through June 30, 2025.
I would happily make that motion to extend his contract till 2025.
And I'd support that
Happily.
vigorously.
All right, we have a motion of support. Is there discussion? Go ahead, Dr. Segleri.
Shear,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Tank,
Can I vote twice or just once?
just one.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
McKellar,
Yes.
and Fisher.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much. The motion carries. So appreciate that.
We're on to Roman numeral 3 updates. Go ahead, Dr. Segleri.
So I would be remiss if I didn't take this moment to thank Dr. Coffin for her leadership within our organization, albeit short. It was definitely impactful, and so we wish her the very best in Farmington. And in that same token, I'd like to formally and publicly welcome Matt Olson to fill the role of Assistant Superintendent of Professional Learning and Innovation. Thank you, board, for your support in the action items, and we're excited to have the quality of leader that Matt is. Clearly impressed the interview committee, and his work in the region speaks for itself. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Nick, for the welcome.
A couple other items. I want to just give you a summary from the Great Start Readiness Program. That has been something that has been discussed in public, recognizing that we are the fiduciary and the overseer of the Great Start Readiness Program. I provided you with a budget summary update. If you look in your email inbox, you would have it, but I want to just review. First and foremost, I want to thank Dr. Donahoe, who has been an exceptional leader in the area of early childhood. We're very fortunate to have her leading the region. But as a reminder, we have about a $4.3 million budget with respect to GSRP, and then we distribute those to community partners for the running of our GSRP programs in the region. I'd like to just say that we have many, many partners, 11 local school districts, a total of 18 subcontractors and 11 local school districts that are operating the GSRP programs to some extent or the other. Again, with these difficult budget times and the circumstances that are around that, our local schools are having to make really, really challenging decisions. And we understand and respect each and every district's approach to that. It is not a comfortable time. You know, we talked about the last time in Linda's great summary around the last proration. I can remember back in 2011, the $470 cut per child. And I can remember having 52 individual conversations with employees that their livelihood was affected, whether it was a reassignment or a layoff. And these are very, very difficult conversations to have. And with that said, I would like to say that we are committed to supporting preschool for our at-risk students within our region. We are committed to supporting our local districts. And I just want to let you know, board, that we are working tirelessly behind the scenes to try to mitigate the effects on this difficult decision that was made. And we'll be working with community partners to try to mitigate the effects of that. So just please know, and I'd be happy to answer any questions on that. But again, I want to give kudos to Dr. Donahue for her work and leadership there. The other thing I would like to do is I would like to again remind our board and thank our board for their vision with our strategic plan. And I say that because not only do we have specific goals that we've seen play out that positively affected our local schools, but I would like to just remind us of our values that we spent a lot of time really ensuring that they match what it is that we expect our employees and of our community and how we're supporting that. And those values are students, learners first, relationships, integrity, listening, service, diversity, equity, empathy, and excellence. And I would just like to say, based on those values, I want to just remind the public and I want to remind the board that we are committed to providing a safe, accepting, and respectful school environment for all students and all staff. We will work with any district who wants to evaluate and bolster any of their curriculums with respect to policies around cultural awareness and diversity training. I'm proud of our work internally, of our staff that have operationalized what it means to value diversity, value equity, and value empathy. We've spent a lot of time unpacking those and identifying specific behaviors like listening without judgment, with, for example, trying to put yourself in other person's perspectives. And we will continue that. I would like to say that at TBAISD, we love and care for the unique gifts of each and every student and staff. We will work tirelessly to honor those and to ensure that every single employee feels valued and every single student we serve and district we serve sees great value in the service we provide. And with that, I will close. And again, thank you, board, for your support. It is truly an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to work with each of you and all of our staff here at TBAISD.
Thank you, Dr. Siglarik. Board members, questions for Dr. Siglarik based on his report? All right, we'll move on to Roman numeral 4, board member reports and requests. As we wrap up the end of the year, it goes without saying that Dr. Siglarik and his team have had challenges none of us could have anticipated, and we're truly blessed to have you all. And sorry it was only 1.5. You earned a heck of a lot more than that, but be that as it may, thanks so much for all that you do. All right.
Well said, Joe. And I just want to add that, as we're facing wild changes in how education is going to be delivered, I couldn't be more pleased with you, Nick, the leadership team, and each and every staff at TBA. And I see staff at all levels, and just the commitment just radiates off of everyone. We're in a time of reshaping education, and I couldn't be more pleased that you guys are the ones that are leading it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? All right, Roman numeral 5. You sure nobody else? Sometimes I move too quickly, I think, so. All right, Roman numeral 5, dates to remember: July 7th, 8 a.m. is our next board meeting. Dr. Coffin, best of luck to you, and thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're adjourned. Be
All right.
safe.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you.